Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be back and talk more about the mega backdoor Roth contribution strategy. I'm going to assume that you already understand the basics of it and have watched my previous video, which really explains what the mega backdoor Roth contribution is. And in this video, I'm going to add a couple clarifications and actually tell you how I've changed my strategy since I last recorded that video in 2017. Now, everything in that video is still accurate, but I no longer think it's the best way to do things with the mega backdoor Roth. So as a brief reminder, most people's 401k employer retirement accounts consist of two more standard types of contributions. The regular pre-tax bucket, so this is money that you put in there and you avoid taxes up front, but will ultimately have to pay taxes later. And the standard Roth contribution. This is money that you pay taxes on when you earn it and contribute it, but you'll never be taxed on any of the gains or withdrawals. At this point, you should know that the mega backdoor Roth relies on the third bucket, these after-tax but non-Roth dollars. Now, the advantage of these is the annual contribution limit for combined pre-tax and Roth is about $19,500 in 2021. Whereas there's a much larger annual contribution limit, a much bigger capacity for dollars, up to $58,000 I think this year, that can go in your after-tax non-Roth account. The downside of this type of money is when you make contributions, if this money grows, if it accrues any earnings, those earnings are fully taxable at income tax rates when you withdraw the money. This whole strategy hinges on the fact that many companies allow you to roll out that after-tax non-Roth money into a Roth IRA even while you're still employed and still have this active 401k. As soon as the money gets out into your Roth IRA, if it makes any earnings in the Roth IRA, those earnings are completely sheltered from taxes. That is, no matter how much this money grows over the decades, it will never be taxed, unlike if it made those gains while still inside the after-tax non-Roth 401k. Much of my last video focused on the fact that if you are unable to convert your after-tax non-Roth money to a Roth IRA immediately, and it actually accrues some earnings while still in your 401k, in the 2014-2015 time period, the IRS clarified that you can actually split your money, send the contributions to your Roth IRA, and send the not yet taxed earnings over into a traditional IRA. Now, although this is a little more complicated, the advantage is that each year that you make this mega backdoor Roth contribution, if you follow this strategy, you entirely avoid any taxable events during this conversion. Because your already taxed contributions are moving to a Roth IRA and your not yet taxed earnings are moving to a not yet taxed traditional IRA, you avoid any taxable events, any impact to your annual tax return when executing the mega backdoor Roth in this manner. And at the time I made my last video, this is how I did it for a couple years. But as many of the comments on that video pointed out, having not yet taxed money in your traditional IRA actually limits your ability to do another early retirement strategy, the normal backdoor Roth. Now, not to plug all my other videos, but I have a separate video explaining what the regular backdoor Roth contribution is. Fundamentally, it involves putting non-deductible contributions in your traditional IRA, rolling them over to your Roth IRA. But if you have untaxed money in your traditional IRA, that really handcuffs your ability to do that, and you'll get hit by the pro rata rule. And if you think about a Venn diagram, the populations of people that want to do the mega backdoor Roth IRA are probably high earners, and almost all of those people are probably also the same people that have to resort to the typical backdoor Roth IRA to do their regular IRA contributions. So the ability to split your mega backdoor Roth money and send the earnings to your traditional IRA to avoid a taxable event in that year is probably not actually beneficial for many of the high earners who are going to seek these strategies. So once my wife and I started earning enough money that we needed to use the regular backdoor Roth and did not want any untaxed earnings in our traditional IRA, for all future years, I went back to the simpler approach of simply taking all my contributions and any small amount of earnings in my after-tax non-Roth and converting them all to my Roth IRA. So the conversion of this orange bucket is realizing some taxable income in that year, maybe $100, a couple $100, depending on how much time and how much gains there were while it was still in your after-tax non-Roth. So although it's a small taxable event for the year, it's actually much simpler, and it keeps my traditional IRA completely empty, allowing the pathway for the regular backdoor Roth. So my recommendation is if you want to be able to use the regular Backdoor Roth and the Mega Backdoor Roth, don't worry yourself about putting the earnings into a traditional IRA. But there's actually even one further improvement and optimization of this strategy that many 401k providers allow, and that is a Roth in-plan conversion of your after-tax money. Instead of rolling this money out to a Roth IRA, you can keep it in the plan and roll it into the Roth bucket of your 401k. And what's totally awesome about this is Fidelity, my 401k administrator, offers to do this automatically. So as soon as I get a paycheck and I contribute some money to my after-tax non-Roth, they immediately roll it over to Roth. So it doesn't earn any earnings, which gives me this tax headache. It doesn't take any work on my part because it's automatic. Most crazy of all, somehow the fact that it's done automatically shows how ridiculous this is. It's really effectively a Roth 401k contribution. It really does bypass the $19,500 annual limit. It's just like a pass-through. It sits in this account for a second and instantly becomes just as good as Roth money. So if your administrator offers this, there's really very little downside to doing this. The only difference is that when you put the money out into a Roth IRA, you can withdraw the already taxed portion, those contributions, at any time tax and penalty free, even if you're still employed. Of course, you obey the ordering rules, but you basically have access to that money in here before age 59 and a half and before you leave your employer. Of course, if you withdraw any of the earnings, that orange bucket, you will either have to let it season for 5 years or pay taxes and 10% penalty, but it's only on that small amount that was earnings. Compare that to the in-plan conversion. In this case, as long as you're still employed, you can't really access that money. Administrators will usually prohibit in-service withdrawals of Roth money. But after your employment ends, if you retire early, even if you're below age 59 and a half, as soon as you're no longer an employee, you can get that money out into a Roth IRA. So that's really my second improvement over my last video. Number one, don't bother splitting off the not yet taxed earnings into a traditional IRA because that limits your ability to do a backdoor Roth. Two, if you have the option, simplify your life and just do Roth in-plan conversions of this money, especially if your administrator offers to do that automatically for you like Fidelity does. Oh, just a quick note. I believe you have to call Fidelity to take advantage of this option. I haven't yet found an option or a checkbox or anything that lets you do this yourself via their web interface. I really hope this video was useful for you. I hope it helped you further optimize your tax-efficient saving for early retirement. Let me know in the comments below if you have any recommendations, any of your own tips, or anything else you'd like me to make a video on.